only way that you're going to lose Zac Taylor is if Joe Burrow turns on him. That's you guys. I mean,
right.
That's
he's never going to do that.
Zac Taylor's
if Joe Burrow at any point thinks that there's a better option out there, or he doesn't see eye to eye with Zac Taylor, then that's to Elliott's point. Put it this way: if Joe Burrow walked in next week and told Mike Brown like this guy is just not cutting it, he's not good enough, he could get fired at the end of the year. If Joe Burrow in 3 years tells Mike Brown that he still believes in him, like there's a chance he's still the coach. Like that's how much influence Joe Burrow has over this franchise.
And you guys don't think
he's the most powerful man in the building.
You don't think it's a possibility that this team starts to get frustrated and starts voicing
No,
their
they already
opinions?
have.
That's what I'm saying.
Jamar Chase 100% is over it.
Even before Joe Burrow was hurt, he was already somewhat towing that line.
I don't know.
I'm always effing open. Are we kidding? Then the very following week, they have a meeting, and then the next game, he's popping off because they're targeting him 15, 20 times a game.
I don't know, guys. I mean, it's tough. I've been listening to you. I understand you guys all make valid points. Zac Taylor's got this team to a Super Bowl, and he's got
not.
this
No,
team to the
listen.
AFC
We all agree
Championship.
that he's literally. I think Elliott's the only one that thinks that he might be gone if they lose out. I don't think there's a chance in hell.
But I also think like it's easy to play both sides of it, right? Like I guess the quick analogy I'd use in college football would be like if I wanted to make a case for Georgia football to make the playoff, even if they lose on an SEC championship game, I'm going to immediately point to the fact they've not lost in whatever X many games. You could quickly turn around and say, well, who have they beaten this year? And what was it on the road or was it at home? Zac Taylor, same thing. Yes, he's done those things, but you could be like, what has Zac Taylor done in his career ever outside of what Joe Burrow's done?
Right. Nothing.
The answer is genuinely nothing. Nothing. You can't point back to what he did in college. You can't point back to what he did in with you could say it was Sean McVay. And you know what? I would even argue the Sean McVay scheme really is a piece of shit without a great quarterback. And maybe you could say that maybe you could say that case about the lot of NFL, but you can't read. You can't do that because you can go and look at other teams that have won games. What about the Steelers? They're winning games, dude, with a terrible quarterback.
Right. Terrible.
A terrible quarterback.
But the
Browns are winning a game with a terrible quarterback.
Right.
The Tennessee Titans.
You can do it without it. It just makes it a lot easier.
Were the number 1 seed in the AFC with a horrible quarterback.
Not horrible. He
was bad. My point is you
can't
can't keep hiding behind great quarterbacks and suggest to everyone that you're an offensive-minded savant.
I don't think that's the thing. That's the disconnect here. Is I don't think anybody in this city, I don't think anybody outside of this city thinks that Zac Taylor's some mastermind.
So he has to give up the play calling.
Right, and that's what we're saying.
Well, then he's the head coach.
Yeah,
at some point, you're the decision maker.
Right?
That's my whole point. My whole point is that conversation is going to happen. I promise you. Somebody up there, Elizabeth, is going to come at him and say, your play calling's not going to work. Everybody knows it. It's objective. It's not an opinion. It's objective. You have to give up play calling. The head coach of an NFL team is not going to take kindly to that. I promise you.
Take away your term. See, when you say play calling, I think it triggers Reed, and Reed is right. A lot of people that bitch about play calling, it's a terrible. It's really a bad take
it's a tired take
because it's not. It's too easy of a take.
Right.
I would more or less say instead of say play calling, I would say your offensive scheme as a whole, like your philosophy on how you go about scoring points. Because if you look at the way that Kyle Shanahan's of the world find ways to get their guys open and things of that nature, that is a much different way than just saying, oh, you need to call that play differently, this play differently. You need to find a way to utilize your talent to its highest degree. In football, in my opinion, is the game that gives you the best chance of making an impact as a coach. Baseball, again, I'm not trying to suggest that your analogy with David Bell and that guy. Listen, baseball, if you're a high school baseball coach, you have the least control of all of them. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't make a difference, but you have you could be a high school basketball coach, high school football coach, and a high school baseball coach. And the baseball coach inevitably is the one that has the least advantage of being able to help guys out when they're out there. You can schematically help your team in football. Does it make the ultimate end of the world difference? No, because you're going to find out at the end of the year you have to have a good quarterback to win the Super Bowl, which is what Reed always argues, and he's right. Yeah. But to sit here and suggest that if they don't win, they win 1 or 2 games the rest of the season, that is a direct reflection on what Casey said all along. Zac Taylor has got to find a way to be better schematically. That's what you mean when you
Correct.
say play calling, and that's what I would argue.
But do you think this gets better? You're losing Tyler Boyd. You're losing T. Higgins. You're losing Joe Mixon. The Bengals have clearly expressed that we don't have a backup running back.
Not worried about Joe Mixon.
That's obvious now.
Not worried about losing the running back.
That's fine. You can say that. We rushed eight times with an all-pro. Not having a running game matters. Not having a running game matters.
Right.
And you saw it yesterday.
I don't think it's Joe that's the reason. I don't think it's.
But we don't have a back. Reed, we don't have a backup running back. Bro.
Well, they're just not. You never see them because they don't run the ball. Like that's what I'm saying. Like it's not that we don't have one. They just don't have it. I truly believe that if Chase Brown or Travion Williams were the running backs for the Baltimore Ravens or the Cleveland Browns, they'd be pretty good.
Them not being in the game yesterday speaks volumes. Them rushing the ball 8 times yesterday
it's
speaks
just
volumes.
the team. That's what I'm talking about. We're all talking
But
about
that's
the same
Zac
thing.
Taylor. That's still Zac Taylor.
And I seriously believe I'm worried. Well, first off, I don't think. Let me say this out loud. There's no chance in hell Zac Taylor is going to be fired. Unless the scenario that Trace brings up, like Joe walks in there and goes like, yeah, we got to do something here. That's the only scenario in which it happens. Even if they lose out, it's not going to happen. So I don't want to talk about that. If you want to talk about the merits of whether he should be fired or not, sure, we can open up that can of worms. But
then the debate of him.
Something needs to change. And you're saying, your point is that if they walk in there and say, hey, you're not allowed to call in plays anymore.
And that's
You're saying he's going to be like, well, I don't want to coach anymore. I don't think Zac Taylor would do that.
I think that scenario that you just said there is as much preposterous as me saying he should be fired. At no point is anybody going to tell that man that he can't call the plays. He is the head coach of an NFL football team.
Yeah,
if you have to have that decision, isn't that a red flag in itself?
Well, here's what's going to happen: is they're going to sit down in your scenario. It's not that they're just going to be like. Maybe Zac Taylor has more pride than I perceive him of having. But they're going to sit him down and say, hey, you can't call plays anymore. And he's going to go like, well, then I don't want to be a coach. And they're like, all right, well, you're not going to be the coach. And then, or the other way it'd go is, hey, you can't call plays anymore. He's like, well, I'm the head coach. It's like, well, you got two options here. You can continue being the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a generational talent at quarterback, and you can keep making a legacy that way. Or you can find yourself the door.